Welcome to the April 17th edition of Card Inside Postgame, a special web-exclusive production here on Channel 12. Let's get a quick take on the setbacks in the construction of the VA hospital continuing this week. VA officials reported that current blueprints show the facility will not be large enough to meet future health care demands, and adding a psychiatric rehabilitation ward is also being considered, which would send the cost for the nearly $2 billion project even higher. Lynn Bartles from the Denver Post. It's not like the VA hospital story has gotten a break over the last few months, but this seemed just like immense salt on the wound of the problem.
You know, it's so hard for me because my dad just died, and he was in a VA hospital in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and it was such an incredible facility and so wonderful, and I kept saying, what are the problems here? But you know, a strange thing for me, even though my dad got great care and these great services, I guess I wonder, would it be so much cheaper to just use existing facilities and send veterans there instead of having this whole separate facility and duplicating everything? I mean, I just look at Denver General, an incredible hospital, University of Colorado Hospital, incredible hospital. You know, if my dad were here, I'd want him to go to one of those two facilities, probably in some of the other places around here. I'm not sure. I mean, I know that sounds terrible, and I'm saying this, people, as the daughter of a veteran who got great care, but I think it's something we have to look at, and this just makes me question it even more.
After spending almost $2 billion, you wonder if you just gave all the veterans in Colorado one of those, you know, kind of a magic credit card, go to the hospital you need to go to, if, you know, you probably wouldn't go through that $2 billion very quickly. You know, David Copeland from the Independence Institute and DU Law School. What do you think about at least the most recent news we're hearing about this issue?
Well, the experience that Lynn's father had is a very common one for veterans. The surveys of people who actually get care in the VA system is there's a very high rate of patient satisfaction, probably higher than actually the general healthcare system. But of course, the problem is access to it. Could you imagine if President Obama, rather than pouring all that energy into this takeover of the part of the healthcare system we had that was working, had shown that much vigor in really fixing what had been long-standing problems in the VA system, which maybe gotten worse under him, but didn't start under him. In last August, Congress enacted something that partially does what the two of you were talking about, which is to say, when you can't get VA care, then you can get a limited voucher and go someplace else. I think that program needs to be greatly expanded. But the idea of adding the psychiatric facility is a great idea, because that's not something where there is the capacity elsewhere in the system currently, and we know that in the long term, psychiatric care is pretty expensive up front, but is a huge cost savings in the criminal justice system and elsewhere over the long term.
Eric Sonneman, political analyst. That struck me too. The psychiatric ward does sound like a really great idea, something that you would certainly want. I guess my first question was, where was this idea 10 years ago when they started building the hospital?
That's my reaction. I mean, let me play off both Lynn and David. First of all, Lynn is absolutely right, and Lynn has obviously been through the ringer with her father's illness and death here and has seen it up close and personal. But you do have to question these days to the extent of which you need a captive system. And David makes a good point that there is high patient satisfaction among the ones who can get care. Obviously, that doesn't survey necessarily the ones who are not getting care or not able to access it in a timely way. Psychiatric care for everyone is critically important, for everyone who needs it, but particularly for veterans in this day and age, coming back with PTSD and living through what they have lived through as they fight our battles overseas. Psychiatric care is particularly important, but the numbers on this thing are just mind-boggling. You can't even imagine. I mean, maybe we should just give the managers of the VA the keys to Fort Knox and say, just go, take whatever you need, you know, because that seems the way it's going. And you would think for 1.73 million, which is, no one believes that's the final number anyway, you would think that maybe they would have already incorporated a psychiatric unit into that to get that number to inflate and blow up to where it is now. I don't know how this ultimately plays out. It's a travesty, and then to make the travesty even worse, the bonuses that VA officials around this country, including some local people involved in this construction project, have received. I thought, when did public sector employees start getting large bonuses? That seems to be a new phenomenon. I certainly don't remember that for years ago.
Yeah.
And at least it ought to be an earned bonus, and I have a hard time seeing how any of these bonuses were earned.
Exactly. Natasha Gardner, senior editor from 5280 magazine. It was a depressing headline, but again, it brings up these questions of why some of these things weren't considered. Despite all the problems, do you think we can get that psychiatric ward, or at least some psychiatric care for Colorado veterans?
I really hope so. I think that would be a fantastic addition to the mental health community in Colorado. You know, I can say without a doubt that I'm going to add hospital designer to the list of jobs I never want to have. I think that if you start out with a plan, you know, the healthcare and treatments and discoveries are moving at such a fast pace. I think you're probably behind the game always. But for this particular job, it's so far behind. I don't quite understand. I mean, so nearly a decade of building, 15 years back discussion about this. Think about the conflicts we've been in before. Think about the troops that we now will be servicing, the vets that we will be servicing. We didn't know what we would be treating 15 years ago. So again, I don't want the hospital designer job, but it might be worth going back and saying, should we start over and rethink this, because so much has happened in 15 years.
That's all the time we have for Colorado Inside Out postgame this week. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think. For everyone here at CPT12.org, I'm Dominic Dezzutti. Thanks for watching.